In today's video, we are looking at solving and graphing inequalities in one variable. The only difference between solving an inequality and solving an equation is at the end, if you multiply or divide by a negative number, then you need to flip the inequality symbol. So let's see why that is true. So we have this inequality here, 1 is less than or equal to 3. That is a true statement. But if I multiply both sides by -1, I end up with a -1 and a -3, but -1 is not smaller than -3. It is in fact larger. So if you change the sign of each side, then the relationship has changed and you need to change the inequality symbol as well. So let's look at some examples. So we have this first example here where we need to solve for x. So we're going to subtract 4 from both sides. We get -2x is less than or equal to 3. And at this point, we are going to divide by a negative number. So we stop and we flip that inequality sign. So we end up with x is greater than or equal to -3/2. So here's -3/2. This would be -2/2, which is 1. And this would be -4/2, which is -2. So we know that we're going to start at our -3/2. The question is, does this solution include the -3/2? And it does because of this equal sign. So if you have a less than or equal or a greater than or equal to, then you get a closed circle. If you have a strictly less than or a strictly greater than, then you get an open circle. Now, do we want to shade to the left or to the right? We want things that are bigger than -3/2, and those are to the right. And if you'll notice, the arrow at the end of the graph is the same as the greater than portion of the symbol. So as long as you have your x on the left-hand side, you can help yourself out by knowing which way to go by just comparing the arrow at the end of the line with the inequality symbol. So let's solve the next one. Because we want the x term to be on the left-hand side, we're going to go ahead and get rid of this plus x by subtracting x from both sides. Then, because the x is on the left-hand side, this side determines what we do. Now we need to divide by -4. Because we divided by -4, we're going to stop, flip that inequality symbol, and then we can simplify. So we want all the values of x that are greater than or equal to -2. So here's our -2, -1, 0, -3, -4, and so on. So I'm going to put a circle at -2. Do I leave it an open circle or do I close it? I close it because of the equality part. It includes the -2. Which way do I shade? Well, my arrow, look here, is going to the right. So I'm going to shade to the right. In our next example, we will need to simplify the left-hand side before we get started. So we're going to go ahead and apply the distributive property. We'll go ahead and combine these two terms here. Then add 34 to both sides. Those zero out. We get -4x is less than 54. So at this point, we are going to need to divide both sides by a -4. So remember, when we divide by a negative, we stop and flip that inequality symbol. This will simplify to have our x on the left-hand side, and 54 over -4 reduces to -27/2. So here's our -27/2. This would be -26/2, which is a -13. This would be -28/2, which is a -14. So we put a circle at -27/2, and then we decide whether or not we are going to leave this as an open circle or a closed circle. So we look at the inequality sign, and there's no equal sign, so we're going to leave it as an open circle. Then we have to decide, do I want to go to the left or to the right? Well, I want things that are bigger than this number, And the inequality symbol helps me with the arrow at the end here, because the x is on the left-hand side. I can do this. It tells me to shade to the right. So I'm an open circle and I'm shading to the right. In our last example, again, we will need to simplify by applying the distributive property. So we get negative 5x plus 10 is greater than 2 minus x. We have variables on both sides. We want the variable to be on the left-hand side, so we're going to go ahead and get rid of this minus x over here. So then this will give us negative 4x plus 10 is greater than 2. We'll subtract our 10 from both sides. Get negative 4x is greater than negative 8. Now, we are going to be, again, dividing by a negative number. That means we stop and we flop, or flip that inequality sign. Then we go back to our simplification. So now we have our number line numbered. We're going to put a circle on 2, and the question is, does it stay open or do we close it? This is strictly less than, so it stays open. If there was an equal there, then we would close it, but right now it's going to stay open. Because x is on the left-hand side, I can use the inequality symbol to help me figure out which way to shade. So I'm going to shade to the left because this is pointing to the left, and I want things that are smaller, and less is to the left. So this is how you go about solving one variable inequalities. The main thing to remember is that if you multiply or divide by a negative, to make sure that you stop and flop, which is basically flipping the inequality sign around to its opposite, since you have changed each side to be its opposite.